I remember there was a Nick Cohen article. This was sort of later on, where after the narrative had been very well established. And
yeah, so for people who don't know who Nick Cohen is, he's a observer, journalist, Guardian journalist, and he's going to be sent for re-education after the revolution. We've got him on the list.
He then, I mean, and he was very opposed to the Corbyn project from the get-go. What he does in this article is he basically takes the anti-Semitic trope that all of the evil bankers and capitalists of the world are Jewish, right? And then he kind of flips it and he says, if you attack banking as an industry, if you say, you know, the financial crash was a big problem, and maybe if we bailed them out, that, you know, shouldn't have just meant that they could continue on. We maybe should get something back for that. If you talk about any kind of regulation or redistribution, as Corbyn was, then you're doing that because deep down you're anti-Semitic, not because you have an actual problem with bankers, but you have a problem with Jewish people and you associate Jewish people with bankers. So it kind of flips the narrative. So another example of this is after Jeremy Corbyn released a video in response to Morgan Stanley. So Morgan Stanley made a statement, like a public address, you know, to the nation, saying, Jeremy Corbyn, if you vote for him, he's a threat to people like us, Morgan Stanley, you know, the beloved bank of that we all love. And so you don't want to see poor old Morgan Stanley getting bad, do you? But the idea was, we are, you know, a big established bank, and, you know, okay, we've made a few mistakes in the past, but we keep your money safe and we keep things ticking over, and Jeremy Corbyn's going to disrupt all this. And that's the sort of Tory line, isn't it? You can't trust the left, you can't trust Labour with finances. They don't know what they're doing, right? So Jeremy Corbyn made a video response to this, saying that he was a threat. He was a threat to the banking class, to the organisation itself, right? Which for a long time had taken a lot of money, a lot of taxpayers' money to bail itself out, and hadn't really given anything back. And then Stephen Pollard, who at the time maybe still is the editor of the Jewish Chronicle.
Now they've got another person who's almost as bad now.
Almost as bad, okay.
Stephen's anyway, like editor at large or some weird honorary thing.
So Stephen Pollard, who was editor at the time, wrote a tweet saying, he also in his own tweet says he can't believe he's saying this, which is funny. He's like, I can't believe this is true, but it must be true because I'm thinking it. And I think that what Jeremy Corbyn is really talking about is not the banks. He's really talking about us, meaning Jewish people. And he's made this whole video about Morgan Stanley and about reforming the banks, not because he wants to reform the banks, not because he has any problem with Morgan Stanley, but because he doesn't like Jewish people, basically. It's like he's attacking Morgan Stanley because he thinks that Morgan Stanley is a bank, and therefore it's representation of sort of Jewish corruption, something like that, right? So he brings the anti-Semitic trope to the party, right? And then blames Jeremy Corbyn for being an anti-Semite. Now, this particular tweet was at the time seen as a step too far, because this was 2018, I think. It was, you know, the anti-Semitism narrative, it's something that grew into being something that now is unquestionable. But there was a period where people were sort of questioning it, where people would say, okay, there's a problem, but Jeremy Corbyn certainly isn't the problem. And then slowly it was like, okay, there's a problem, and Jeremy Corbyn is part of that problem.
It's grown hugely, hasn't it? It got pretty bigger, like actually the whole of the left is the problem, and until you get the whole of the left out, the Labour Party. Yeah.
So yeah, but I was just going to say, at the time he got a lot of sort of kickback against this tweet, and then did apologise for it. And he actually said, which was really interesting and revealing, he said, "Oh, I'm sorry for writing this tweet, you know, sort of saying, misunderstanding this Morgan Stanley video, but." And in his defense, he said, but if you have a lot of anti-Semitism within the Labour Party, there's a lot of anti-Semitism around, then it becomes very difficult to know what is anti-Semitic and what isn't. And I think that's very revealing, right? Because that he's basically, in a way, admitting that, yeah, if you're fostering this narrative, then you can kind of make everything seem anti-Semitic. And it's very difficult for people to argue one way or the other.